Hello, Northlanders. This is Dan Williamson with a special episode of the Duluth News-Tribune Minutes. On Wednesday, September 13th, candidates looking to represent the city of Duluth as mayor took the stage at a forum organized by the Duluth Chamber of Commerce and the News-Tribune. The following is the complete audio of that forum. We encourage you to check your podcast feed for audio for other forums we hosted this week to give you the information you need to make decisions at the ballot box that are right for you. And now, here's the audio.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I know we've got a full house, standing room only, but we also want to be really respectful of time. We're so grateful for you all for being here, grateful for our candidates who we'll introduce in just a second. My name is Dan Fanning. I have the pleasure of serving as Vice President of Duluth Area Chamber and the Executive Director of the Chamber Foundation. We are proud and honored to have many of our staff members, our board members here. We are also proud and honored to partner with the Duluth News-Tribune to help offer this offering. This is a free opportunity to hear directly from our two good candidates running for mayor. We're grateful for their time as well. Thank you all for being here. We really appreciate it. This is awesome to see such a full house today. This is a really unique opportunity for our community as well. So Chuck and I will just briefly go through kind of the formats. As you all know, we work with the civility project through the Duluth Superior Area Community Foundation. We're grateful for them to be here. Of course, thank you for being here. Thank you for your work on this. This is meant to be an informative forum. This is a respectful dialogue. This is not meant to be a contentious debate. We know that won't be an issue with these two professional candidates, of course, but we say that at the top of every forum. Again, we look forward to talking about the issues that we know matter to many of you. So again, on behalf of the Chamber and the Chamber Foundation, thank you for being here. Thank you to the candidates, thank you to the DNT, thank you to the local media for being here to cover it. We even have Mary LaHammer and her crew up from the Twin Cities up here to cover this. So I think that really speaks to the importance of this race, not just for the local, the regional, and even the state. So again, on behalf of the Chamber, thank you for being here, and I'll turn it over to my partner, Chuck.
Thank you, Dan. On behalf of the News Tribune, I welcome everyone who's here, everyone who will be watching this later online at duluthnewstribune.com. We should have it posted within a day or two, is what I'm being told. Maybe later today, maybe tomorrow. Welcome to our editorial board members. As Dan said, the purpose of the forums is to inform the electorate so as they make their decisions in the election in November, but it's also going to help to inform. There you go. Now we're off and running. It's also going to help to inform the newspaper's editorials. So I welcome our editorial board members who are also here. A final welcome to the folks from the Civility Project. Speak your piece. This forum is civility certified. You're all handed some materials on the way in. No signs, no outbursts, those sorts of things won't be tolerated. We will allow time for applause at the very end. Also, if you have they were running low on the Civility Project materials that were handed out. So if you need to share, please feel free to share. If anyone can leave theirs behind when they're done instead of just throwing them away, then we do have some more forums tomorrow. We'd appreciate that. With that, I will introduce our two candidates, and we'll offer them 1.5 minutes each to kind of offer some opening remarks, tell us a little bit about themselves and their plans for office. The incumbent mayor is Emily Larson. The challenger is Roger Reinert. We will start with Mayor Larson.
Great. Can you hear me? Good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Roger. Thank you, community, for being here. My name is Emily Larson. I serve as your mayor in the community in this city of Duluth. I live in the Hillside neighborhood with my husband of 24 years in the very same house where we raised our two sons who are now grown. I am seeking re-election because the progress of this community, the progress of the last 7 years, is worth fighting for and worth continuing. As mayor, I created and led a streets program that has increased streets reconstruction 850% since taking office. As mayor, I have added 1,700 new units of housing, which is more than has been created in that same time period for decades. We have decreased crime citywide 22%. We have decreased greenhouse gases 32%, and we are in our 4th straight record year of private investment in this community. Who leads the city matters. How we lead the city, the relationships that we have, the strategies that we bring, and the vision and tangible deliverables matters. You have a very clear choice in this election. My best hope is you see that throughout the next hour, the next weeks, because it is a choice between moving forward or risking losing ground. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you.
Thank you. Roger Reinert. No applause till the end, please.
Thank you, Chuck, Mayor Larson, everyone who has made the time to be here today. I'm running for mayor because, like many of you, I just think it's time for something different. It's time that we expect more and do better with our core city services like streets, utilities, public safety, our neighborhood parks and community centers, engaging our residents. And I'm running because we haven't had a truly meaningful election since 2007. That was Don Ness and Charlie Bell. 4 years ago, 2/3 of Duluthians did not even vote in the mayoral election. That's not healthy for democracy, nor is it healthy for Duluth. I come to this role with public sector, private sector, and military leadership experience that I think is relevant. I've had the opportunity to serve you in the past on the Duluth City Council, twice elected council president, in the legislature, 3 terms, where I served in the House, 2 terms in the Senate. I've had the opportunity to serve our country overseas in Afghanistan, and again overseas in Italy at the start of the pandemic, coming back, stepping in at the deck, where I had the opportunity to spend almost a year as the interim executive director ensuring that assets survived the pandemic. The first part of our campaign was entirely about listening to you, your issues, your concerns. Growing our commercial tax base, housing across all income levels, streets, downtown Duluth, and affordable property taxes. These are not a list of complaints. They are your basic expectations of city government, and they were reaffirmed in the chamber survey that was released yesterday. So, thank you. I know we'll have a chance to chat about these issues today.
Thank you both very much for your opening remarks. And now we're going to jump to, we have a series of 10 questions, most of which will be about 1-minute questions. We'll mention that at the start of every question. This first question will be 1 minute, and we just want to start off by talking about the budget, city spending, and property taxes. The good news is last year we saw an increase in local government aid. The chamber was really pleased to help lobby for that. That said, we are also looking at a number of local governments looking for tax increases this year. How can the city continue to be fiscally responsible while also ensuring basic city services are adequately provided? For this one, we will start with Roger Reinert.
Well, thank you. I think one of the things that, again, you've heard me talk about in the opening is our priority has to be focusing on our core city services, aligning the staff and the resources to get those basic expectations done so that we don't continue to erode trust with our residents. And I will applaud Mayor Larson and the others who have worked so hard on LGA, but I also will flag that LGA is concerning. When that makes up almost 1/3 of the revenue for our city budget, that's just not reliable. I was in the legislature when we saw that be unreliable. It's actually one of the reasons I ran for the legislature, because Governor Pawlenty unallotted us after we had set the budget, after we had set the levy, and the only recourse we had was to make cuts to core city services. So one of the things I talk about repeatedly is growing our commercial tax base. In addition to aligning those resources, growing our commercial tax base is how we become self-reliant in paying for those things that we all want and expect from city services. And I would also add, we have so much opportunity to engage our residents in doing things in our community as well.
It goes
Thank you,
fast.
Roger.
It goes really fast.
Mayor Larson.
Okay, question is on taxes and budget. Next year, under my budget, and I appreciate that my opponent appreciates my budget. It is hard work from our entire team and years of investment on the part of staff and city council to get us to a budget where you will pay less in property taxes to the city of Duluth next year than you currently pay. 27 cents of your property tax dollar goes to support city services, all of our city services. How we spend that money matters. The increase in local government aid is something that I have championed with you every step of the way, and I'm proud of our increase that we received. My opponent had the opportunity to increase local government aid when he was in a trifecta in 2013, 2014. That did not happen, but the work that we have done with our legislature did make that happen. So in your next budget, your property taxes will be going down. I'm proud of that. You deserve that. We deserve that. The budget also takes care of capital needs, addresses staff, prioritizes public safety, and invests in economic development. Thank you.
Did you want to respond to that at all, Roger?
Thanks. So let's just start by acknowledging that the the budget does focus on core city services, and I am grateful to see that. It does also include a 2% property tax increase. The only way the property taxes actually go down is if your valuations stay flat. And that is probably not realistic given our related trend line. And I'll just respond to the comment about my service in the legislature. I was awarded Legislator of the Year for working on the LGA issue, for bringing together regional centers and their mayors at the time to redo the LGA formula so that it was more sustainable for all of us in greater Minnesota. And that was also a topic that I led as chair of the Legislative Audit Commission. It is something that is important, but it's something we can't remain dependent on.
Mayor, you could have a final word on that question if you'd like.
Always. Thank you. Other people taking credit for the hard work of a budget, a local government aid support, and the many, many cuts that we have made across the city to support our budget. Doesn't sit well with me, and I don't think it sits well with our public either. We have a budget that we can rely on that is equitable, that is fair, that is paying for city services, that is not defensive. It simply shows up in a meaningful way for all of our residents in all of our neighborhoods. My commitment to you and my vision with this community has always been the same. It continues to be, ensuring that every neighborhood across the city are ones of choice and opportunity and prosperity. In order to do that, taxation and budget is one of the ways that we show up in a meaningful way.
Thank you both.
Thank you. Our next question is about potholes. Let's get to it real quick. And also infrastructure. Curious, how do you feel the city can do a better job of repairing not just more streets, but my street, everyone's street? Yeah. Is there anything the city can do so people don't feel the need to complain so much? Mayor Larson, we'll start with you.
Oh, thank you so much, Chuck. When I took office, we were doing 2 miles of road a year. 2 miles of road per year. We are now doing 17 miles. Next year, I proposed 19 miles in my budget. The next 3 years, we will do 50 miles. At the same time, we are investing in utilities at the same time, so we are not coming back the next day, the next month, the next year. We are working with the state, we are working with the county to ensure that every project that is going on, we're doing the ancillary development and street work around that. What we can do, this is where I actually find expect more, do better is offensive to both city staff, who work incredibly hard with the resources that we have, and a community who needs to know and understand how. How do we do more with the resources that we have? In my next budget, we are also proposing using some of the revenue savings that we have and investing in additional street work. This is the first year in decades that we have patched every primary and secondary road across the city. This is the first year in decades that we have had a fully funded summer street repair program. Conversely, when my opponent was in city council, he cut street crews, and it is actually the crew number that we have now is the one that he made possible. That is the decision making the last time my opponent was in a role of local government. I think it was time. Okay, that says 30 seconds, I'm sorry.
Roger?
It's okay, we usually think we're getting a bonus, so it all works out, so.
Okay.
Roger, Reinert,
Yeah.
the question is about fixing the streets.
Right. So everyone in this room and many outside this room will say that streets and utilities is a top priority. The Chamber released a survey yesterday where it said, where would you invest the money that the city is going to get from the sale of the Cirrus property, or the sale of the property to Cirrus? Streets and utilities was the #1 response, somewhere I think around 34%. So it continues to be a pressing issue. We felt it last winter when we weren't plowing streets well. We saw it in the spring with how tough the streets in Duluth were from one end of the city to the other. Now, yes, I served on the city council when we were going through the financial meltdown of 2008. Now, 1 of 9 city councilors does not get to write the budget or make the budget possible. Mayor Ness brought to us proposed cuts in order to try and balance the budget at a time that we didn't get financial bailouts from the state or the federal government. There are practical steps that we can take and do a better job with our street and utility infrastructure. It starts with a mile-to-mile assessment. Okay, we'll come back to it.
Mayor Larson, maybe one more minute on,
A minute does go fast.
on funding sources. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, we no longer do assessments for street repair because you are already paying into a 0.5% sales tax. Thank you for that. I do not agree with bonding and increasing debt load to do further streets. That's what got us in the mess in this first place. And the vote to cut city staff in our streets department did not take place in 2008 during the budget crisis. It took place in 2006 when things were strong and healthy.
Final word, Roger Reinert.
Sure. To be clear, assessment is not a financial assessment. I think we look at the entire utility infrastructure, do a mile-by-mile evaluation of where they're at. Do we have streets that still need to be there? Are there places we can actually shrink the physical infrastructure, make it more cost-effective? I do actually think that we should bond against the ongoing half-cent sales tax. It's what the county did to spend $68 million in a very short period of time to get them over the hump so that they're primarily maintaining instead of constructing.
Thank you. Question 3, we're going to shift gears just a little bit and talk about parks and recreation. Last year there was a referendum on the ballot that did not pass. So with that said, should you be mayor next term, how can we ensure that we continue to better address parks and maintenance and improvements that we know are needed? For this question, we will begin with Roger Reinert.
Well, thank you. I mean, first of all, I will applaud Mayor Larson for looking at the opportunities where we have financial revenue. She actually, last session, used a tool that I wrote as a state senator, an extension of a food and beverage tax that was originally intended by Mayor Don Ness to be an investment in our far west neighborhoods. That originally was written from 39th Avenue west, then we came back the next year, amended it to 13th Avenue west, moving west. Those additional funds will certainly help. But they, again, have to be the sort of thing that we say to our residents are a priority within a core city service that city government delivers. My concern about looking at funds external to the general fund is how do we ensure ongoing financial stability? When we've gone from 80 million to 108 million proposed in the 2024 budget, but we still need to look to a 1%, we still need to look to a half cent, we still need to look to a food and beverage tax in order to maintain those critical investments. It's just concerning long-term about the financial stability of revenues to offset expenses.
Thank you, Roger. Mayor Larson?
Clear choice and distinction on this issue in two different ways. First of all, I do take the work that we are doing in parks is my work. It is not work that somebody else can claim credit for. It is not work that my opponent can claim credit for. On Monday night, I unveiled a 10-year, 4-phase plan to invest in parks across the city, to invest in youth sports and facilities and tournaments across the city, to invest in hockey rinks and Freiburger and Wade across the city. My question for my opponent on this issue is if you believe that there is money in the general fund, but you're complaining about the money in the general fund, but we shouldn't rely on money outside of the general fund, how do we do that? The question is how? I am not hearing an answer outside of a 10-year, 4-phase, well-funded, fully funded plan to do this.
We have time for a 60-second rebuttal from both.
Sure, thank you. You know, one, if the only person qualified to serve in the office is the incumbent, we could just skip the election and save the taxpayers money and time. I don't have access to, and I would welcome, I mean, if you're willing to lend me the city administrator, who I see is here, the finance officer, the budget officer, I'll be happy to go deep dive into 10-year plans. Until then, I'm just a citizen like everybody else in the room who has access to all the information that everybody has. And I don't think that it's false credit to just point to a tool that I wrote as a state senator and passed through the legislature that gives us a food and beverage tax that admittedly I think is a good source of revenue to use for these projects.
Mayor?
Everything I've talked about, every budget I've done, every presentation I've made, it is public. It is not hard to find. It is easily accessible. You don't need to be a mayor to have access to this information. It's important that you know that. The risk of being a mayor is everything I do is public. The best part of being a mayor is everything I do is public. I have a record. It is a record I am proud of. It is a record of being decisive and having a vision for this community. It is a record that rests on the transparency of budgeting, on taking input from the public, and ensuring that you have access to every ounce of information that you deserve. It's just not accurate to say that that information isn't available. It's available to all of you. Be happy to help you get it. I would be happy to help you get it.
Thank you both.
I've got it.
Thank you. There's a controversial plan in place to close Lester Park Golf Course and to redevelop that land, that property. Is the plan the right one? I guess our question is, what do you think should happen at the Lester Park Golf Course property? Mayor Larson, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Chuck. Transitioning Lester Park Golf into residential housing and getting it back on a tax base is incredibly important to the future and stability of this community. It's full stop. This is a planning process that started back in 2015. It was determined that there was $2.5 million of debt on the golf courses and $20 million of improvement were needed. A task force convened that made recommendations that were accepted, that went to the Parks Commission, that has gone to the City Council several times. And in 2019, the plan that I established actually is making money. And part of that is because we are prioritizing investments into anger. We are prioritizing creating housing and activation on the site of Lester. We listened to the community and offered many opportunities for RFPs that would continue golf, and none of them came to fruition. This one to me is incredibly clear. Playing politics with a short issue that doesn't think of the long game, that's not what we do in Duluth. That's not what we do.
Thank you. Roger Reinert.
Thanks, Chuck. And I guess I don't see listening to residents who want to have a voice and feel like they didn't have a voice in the process as playing politics. I've had an opportunity in the well over 1,000 conversations we've had from one end of the community to the other to hear about Lester Golf. It was surprising. I'm not a golfer, but it is a major issue to residents on the eastern side of our community who have come over and over again and said, there are ways for Lester to be sustainable. There are ways for Lester to not be a drag on city operations. There are ways to maintain 18 holes of public golf and still have housing development along the edge of that asset. Whether that's small increases in green fees, whether that's investment in winter activities like Top Golf, whether that's year-round activities like cross-country skiing and snowshoeing that make a clubhouse there with food and beverage a viable option for residents in the eastern part of our community. Now, I've not committed to that it's going to stay open, but what I've committed to is having that conversation again with those residents who want to be heard and who want to bring those ideas forward.
Thank you. One more minute, Mayor Larson.
Thank you. We have an RFP out right now on this property, and you are welcome to submit these ideas. It is open until September 21st, and it is not the first time we have had an RFP for this land and this property to hear your ideas and the innovations that you may have. I want to thank the hundreds of residents who have participated in the public process on this land and this discussion since 2015. And this is where there is a risk in the future of our decision making. We have already heard from my opponent that we need to expand housing and commercial tax base. Here's a way that you do it. Here is a way that we do this in a way that has community input that has been fully vetted through the Parks Commission, through the City Council, and is up for you to be able to submit ideas right now. You have, again, another opportunity. I would love to see your submission in the RFPs, which are due September 21st.
Roger, I hear you supporting the continuing public process, but I'm not real clear. Do you support closing Lester Park Golf Course or in redeveloping it?
I'm interested in what I've heard in those conversations, Chuck, is both and. That we have an opportunity to maintain 18 holes, probably lose the Lake 9. That's a great opportunity for that housing development. But what I think is important is that there are large groups of people like the Friends of Duluth Public Golf who just feel like they haven't had a chance to have input to shape that and have a viable chance for their ideas to be potentially implemented.
Thank you.
We are at question 5, and we're doing well on time, so we're going to continue to ask for 1-minute answers and allow 1-minute rebuttals as well. And this question is about business conditions, which is, of course, near and dear to our hearts at the Duluth Area Chamber. Fair or not, there's been a long-standing narrative and reputation that Duluth can be a tough place to do business. Whether you agree or not, what could you do to help ensure that we are doing all we can to help make it easier to do business and supporting economic development and being more business and developer friendly in Duluth? Roger, we'll start with you.
Well, thanks, Daniel. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Fair or not, Duluth has a reputation as a difficult place to do business. And if one of the goals that we have is to grow our commercial tax base so that we can be more self-reliant and not dependent on the state for local government aid, we have to address that, and we have to change that. And that starts with the culture within City Hall, so that from the mayor through the executive leadership, through the planning and development staff, and our city inspectors, we see ourselves as partners to projects. If a project fits within our zoning, fits within our code, then our job is to get to yes. How do we move that project forward? And there are great questions, and there are things that need to be called out as projects move along. But what you'll hear when you talk to folks is, I can get done through Hermantown in a few weeks. I can get done through Superior in a few weeks. And it takes me sometimes months to move a project through Duluth. And my best example is this young woman that I met in West Duluth who was just trying to do a one-chair salon in her home. And it took her nearly 7 months to move that through City Hall. We have to work on that.
Same question, Mayor Larson.
Thank you. We have just hired Chad Ronchetti as our new Planning of Economic Development. He is an incredible leader, and I know many of you are in support of that. I want to thank the Chamber and Apex and Downtown Duluth and many other groups who participated in the interview process for that. One of Chad's first tasks is to help implement the economic development audit. In my State of the City, I think it was 2 years ago, I challenged you, the community, and us to a robust conversation on what does need to be improved. Let's ask the question. Over 200 of you submitted survey responses. Over 25 of you sat down to have one-on-one conversations. That is the role of our new economic developer, is to implement that. I'm proud of that. Again, we are in a 4th record straight year of private investment. We have a $1 billion hospital. We have got hundreds of units of housing coming online. There is a narrative we need to keep working with, but the realities are that we are actually a community moving forward, and falling too far into that negative narrative, that is the risk of moving back.
Roger, you've got up to 60 seconds if you want to talk about that some more.
Yeah, thanks, Daniel. And that investment is good. Unfortunately, not all of it has gone to our tax base. In fact, big chunks of it have not gone to our tax base. And what happens when we have this reputation that we have not been able to move for years is when we do projects, we end up needing to use tools like tax abatement or TIF, which actually also don't contribute to our local property tax base. And when commercial isn't contributing, residential pays more. And we've seen that as homeowners as we've watched property taxes double over the last 8 years. So we have to address the issue so that we continue to move forward. And I think Chad Ronchetti was a great hire. So I applaud you, Mayor Larson, for bringing him on board. And I think he has a big task ahead of him.
And final word on this one from Mayor Larson.
Yes. So if you look at our sales tax, if you look at the contributions from the community through the retail and through our property tax, we are seeing expansion, we are seeing growth, we are capturing that. And again, every single opportunity, we have got to be tenacious about expanding our tax base, which brings me back to an opportunity like Lester Golf. We cannot be wishy-washy about the opportunities that we have. We do not have time for that. We need to be working with Essentia and their land use plan to build the ancillary developments all around there. We don't have time to wait. We have to invest in opportunities like Cirrus and the Innovation Center that takes an $800,000 annual liability and turns it into a $15 million innovation center. That is what leadership and vision is about. It is about using every single opportunity, lever, policy, staff, investment to grow a narrative, to change a narrative. And the more that you as a leader reaffirm an old stereotype and narrative, the more it locks in and the more you risk slipping back.
Thank you both.
Thank you. There was an excellent story in this morning's News Tribune about homelessness and homeless encampments. If you haven't read it, I encourage you all to do so. And I would say that even if I didn't work for the paper, but the presence of the encampments in Duluth, and seems like they're growing more frequent, illustrates or the need to address affordable housing and also housing at all income levels. What solutions and strategies should the mayor's office be championing? Mayor, we'll start with you.
We should champion housing at every level, including, I'll bring it up again, Lester Golf. But we have invested $19 million in ARP funds into affordable housing. We've invested into expanding warming center hours. We have invested into shelter. We are doing the investments. What we need is more mental health, community health, chemical health. We are the first police department in the nation to have a nurse respond and co-respond, because we know that part of the need we are seeing is not something that jail helps answer. I really understand why this is a hard issue. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't look good. Everybody who is struggling out there is somebody's son or daughter or mother or father. And having them housed is better than not having them housed. This is a very complicated issue to answer in a minute, and I will say that we have 18 city staff who meet 3 times a week on this issue with CHUM, with the state, with the county, to ensure that we are not just band-aiding people along, but we're creating long-term solutions that can actually move people forward.
Thank you. Roger Reinert.
Sure, thanks, Chuck. And I live West Hillside, just west of Mesaba Avenue, so I have 6 encampments within walking distance of my home. Like, it's a very tangible, real issue. And I've had to call Duluth Police before because of problem behaviors that were happening. And I know the struggle they feel when they respond to those calls. And I've taken the opportunity to do the ride-along. I've done a walk-along with our Clean and Safe team. I've helped pick up needles in Cascade Park. This issue has to be addressed on 3 different levels. One, locally, we're better connecting and continuing to broaden connections with crisis response. ER beds, the jail, are not effective or affordable solutions. We have to look at long-term residential support, something akin to the San Marco controversial, difficult project that I supported as a city councilor. And at the state level, we have to have a loud voice advocating for the state to bring back our regional treatment system. As regional centers, we get the opportunity to collect and provide for a region all sorts of amazing things. We also have the challenge to provide for a region the care and services that individuals might need when they're struggling with mental health and opioid addiction.
Mayor, it is a complex issue, as you stated. What is maybe the first thing or the biggest thing that we could be doing right now or need to be doing right now?
How much time do I get? Is this, no, seriously, is this like, are we extending the question?
We certainly can, if that's okay with both of you.
That's fine.
Go a minute and a half on this rebuttal. Go ahead.
Thank you. We are investing $600,000 annually committed ongoing to community coordinated response, which helps co-invest in response of social work, mental health, those kinds of things. We have to continue to do that, no question. We have to invest in more affordable housing. When my opponent was on city council, he voted against affordable housing 3 times, critical projects that needed to happen. We do need more projects like San Marco, and I'm proud to have been on the board of the organization that brought that forward, created the idea, and brought it into action. That project will now cost probably $30 million to create and recreate. We need to invest heavily in the Stepping On Up model that is being led by CHUM and the community. And we need to be mindful and compassionate and caring in how we are working through this. One of the things that's frustrating about this issue is we know our country, as a nation, we have the resources to address these needs. As a local government, we don't. But we do as a nation, and that is really, really challenging. What I tell people is that while this is happening all over the state and all over the country, we don't live all over the state. We don't live all over the country, we live here. And in Duluth, we take care of each other. So what we need to continue to do is to be generous in spirit and giving and investment, but we need to be bold and visionary and unrelenting in getting every single penny out of the federal and state, local governments, working with the county to advance all of that.
Thanks. Minute and a half, if you'd like it.
Sure. Again, I'll just come back to a couple themes that I touched on in my opening comments. Number one, we have to look at the opportunities to have increased partnerships with our other governmental entities that have responsibility for Duluth as well. St. Louis County is a great example. There are opportunities to expand what our services, especially our police officers, our CERT team, substance use recovery team, are already doing in those areas, connecting with public health. We need to work with the county sheriff's office so that we can support Duluth PD in responding to citizens that are asking for help. We're down 23 officers. The sheriff's office also has responsibility for Duluth, for downtown Duluth. We also need to look at where are the opportunities to connect with nonprofits that are doing great work. I had an opportunity to spend a couple hours on Friday with the Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge program that's in downtown Duluth. That's a force for good in downtown Duluth, addressing in really effective ways substance use and recovery issues. And they're looking at expanding into mental health, fentanyl, opioid areas, which was great news, because the gap that we're missing is not crisis response. We can do better for sure. The gap that we're missing is long-term residential care. It doesn't exist. When we all decided to dismantle the regional treatment system, which was a good ethics and value-based decision at the time, we took that capacity away. And what we're left with is beds in the ER. And even worse, we're left with jail cells. And again, neither of those are affordable, nor are they effective.
Thanks.
Thank you. Roger, you mentioned downtown a couple times. That's a perfect segue for our next question, question 7, which is going to focus primarily on downtown Duluth. We know downtowns have changed, Duluth no exception. Throughout the country, post-pandemic, downtowns have changed. We know that. We'll leave this question a little bit more open-ended. Can you just talk more about your vision for downtown Duluth, and how do we ensure, as a business community, as safety concerns, how are we meeting our full potential? Roger, we'll start with you.
Sure. Thanks, Daniel. You know, a couple things that we need to think about when we think about downtown. One is, again, whether it is real or perceived, folks don't feel safe downtown. And so we just have to acknowledge that. One of my favorite go-tos that I often think about is Admiral James Stockdale, who, when he talked about his 7 years as a prisoner of war in Vietnam, said, the way that I got through was both acknowledging the cold reality of my present circumstances while never losing track of the vision that I had. Our downtown needs to be vibrant, our downtown needs to be energetic, our downtown needs to be full of individuals. And our downtown can be that. I just finished reading an article about Minneapolis and the revival of Minneapolis's downtown. It is the fastest growing residential neighborhood in Minneapolis. So both addressing the public safety issues, but also growing a downtown residential population at a time when we need housing as a community, in there I think is the solution that gives us, again, a vibrant, energetic downtown with retail options again.
Thank you. Mayor Larson?
Well, I am pleased that my opponent is on my same page. I convened a downtown task force this past year. Thank you to the 14 leaders of downtown who helped create 27 different recommendations from innovation, investment, vision, and activation. 24 of those are underway. Next week, we are releasing the Downtown Housing Study. It is a public meeting, I believe it's on the 19th, where we will share with you the results of the study that is actually documenting how we flip these office spaces into housing. No question that's the opportunity. That's where we're already going. We are also addressing blight. We are also investing in different strategies for the Skywalk. We are adjusting hours. We are doing storefront renovation loans. We have increased patrols. We have rebuilt the entire Superior Street in the last few years. We have a $1 billion hospital that just went in on one side, and an NLX investment of $194 million that is going in on the other side. In between is nothing but opportunity, nothing but opportunity. Now is the time to move. Now is the time to keep going forward.
We've got time for 1 minute rebuttals on this one. I will just mention that our next questions focus specifically on public safety. So we're just talking about downtown. Could we talk about business conditions and some of the housing issues that you brought up, and how can we make that happen going forward?
Yeah. And again, I think we both touched on it. It is a downtown residential population. Again, if you didn't see it, the Star Tribune did a great article about Minneapolis and the growing residential population downtown. Fastest growing residential neighborhood in the city of Minneapolis. And we all know post-COVID and with changes in work style, we're going to have excess commercial capacity. And the rapidity with which we can turn that into residential will benefit our downtown. More residents, more eyes on things, more energy, more investment, people that want to connect and invest in their neighborhood, help programs like the Teen Challenge program, help programs like I think what we're going to see at the First Presbyterian, a major footprint in our downtown. And that then also gets us the retail things like coffee shops and bookstores and restaurants, all those things that continue to bring people downtown, in addition to those historic professional services that are still there. So, I mean, as a guy who lives in a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2,200 square foot home, I'm excited for the opportunity to own something downtown and be a downtown resident.
Thank you. And final word from Mayor Larson.
Thank you. What my opponent is describing is the 18-hour day, which is the actual basis of the task force. How do you get people moving around 18 hours a day? How do you activate the storefronts along the Superior Street so that they aren't filmed over or covered up, but they are open and bright and lit? All of this is what we are currently working on. And again, it is very distinctly different to have a list of projects or a list of to-dos than to have a cohesive vision. And my vision, and I think that was the question, my vision is for a robust, busy downtown Duluth where people are safe, where it is well lit, where people know where they're going, where they're comfortable, where you can drop off your kids and feel safe about them walking around. That is the vision. And with the bookend investments we have going on and the steady, persistent focus we have for these 10 blocks in between, we will get there. We are getting there.
Thank you.
Thank you. As Daniel said, our next question is about crime, violent crime, gun crimes. They get a lot of attention. This also, like downtown, might be a perception issue. The statistics show that maybe crime isn't on the rise. But how should Duluth do a better job of addressing public safety and crime, especially those violent crimes and those gun crimes that get so much attention? And how can Duluth do a better job of addressing that perception of safety? Emily Larson, we will start with you.
Thank you. Violent crime actually is down citywide. That is actually true. We are not seeing the incidences that we have seen at other times. And perception matters. Every step of the way, I have invested in our public safety teams. I have hired 2 police chiefs. And we have provided them the gear and the supports that they need to be successful. This is where there is a very clear distinction around what core city services mean, because when we start disinvesting in opportunities of connection and community, whether that is a park system, whether that is a library, whether that is giving places and spaces for people to be, they are disconnected from one another, and they no longer see their humanity in each other. And that is part of what we are seeing. We're also seeing an era of people feeling frustrated. We have lived through a lot in the last 4 years, a pandemic, the murder of George Floyd, a riot in Washington. That is trauma that our people are walking around experiencing. And part of how we build greater public safety is to build greater connection between people so they see each other in their humanity, so they protect one another, and so they speak up and speak out.
Thank you. Roger Reinert.
Great, thank you. Well, first, I'm just incredibly proud to have the endorsement of both Duluth Police and Duluth Fire in this election, and I think having that joint endorsement from our public safety team says a lot. I would also add to that I had the opportunity to visit with one of our Duluth police officers and his spouse. They actually had me out to look at a broken culvert that they've been trying to get the city to fix for a couple years now. And his comment was, coming off of our violent crimes unit, that because we're short-staffed, unless somebody's actually hurt, they don't have the opportunity to do much more than collect the evidence and log it in the record. And that should be very concerning. You know, it wasn't that many weeks ago that we had somebody killed due to gun violence in our Lincoln Park neighborhood. And we had homes where residents opened their door to find bullet holes in their doors in West Duluth. Also, that should be very concerning. We have to speak out on that. How do we move that forward? First of all, we hire the 23 officers that we need to replace, but then we look at the other opportunities that are available to engage others in helping to do the work of community policing.
Mayor Larson.
On Monday, we have 9 new officers starting with the Duluth Police Department, and I welcome them in anticipation to join a character-based, outstanding department. We have increased wages 8%, specifically for police, to help make our department a more wage equitable place to work. Our gap in having staffing issues is because it is a very difficult profession to be in. We know this. We know this about several professions right now, and policing is one of them. We give them our full support. We welcome the new staff. We give them the equipment, the rescue vehicle, the protective gear that they need. We have their back every step of the way.
Thank you. Final word on crime, violent crime, and perception of crime. Roger Reinert.
Well, and yet that increase still keeps them below the state median average for police officers. So we lose officers to other departments. We lost an officer who went to Maple Grove and took a $10,000 a year increase to basically write parking tickets instead of deal with the full range of challenging policing activities that we have in Duluth. What I didn't get a chance to say in my previous answer is we need to do things like really reactivate our citizen patrols. Let's get folks going through the Police Citizen Academy again, and let's reestablish the police reserve. So that takes some of the more routine policing activities off the plate of our licensed officers so that they can do what we need police officers to do. Do more than collect evidence and log it, but actually get into the deep investigation and make the connections between the different activities that we have going on in our community. If you have the opportunity, go sit with the shift change when they get their intel briefing. I'll use my Navy language, between their shifts. It's pretty eye-opening. It's a chance for you to see what actually is going on in our community that we don't always get the chance to see as everyday residents.
Thanks.
Question 9, workforce development challenges. As you can imagine, this is an issue that's near and dear to our heart as a chamber. We hear about this daily from a number of businesses and organizations that are still struggling with workforce issues. We know this is an all-encompassing issue that has to do with housing and childcare, and many of us in this room are working on this issue. But as mayor, going forward, how can the city do more to ensure that workforce needs are being met so we can continue to grow our economy, support the businesses that are here, and continue to attract new jobs as well? For this one, we'll start with Roger.
All in a minute, right? Right. Like all of these. So I think I just hit on two big themes, and we'll probably have an opportunity to pull at those a little bit more over the course of this question. Housing, certainly. I mean, the place that our market really is stuck right now is in the middle. And the fact that people can't find those homes means our employers have a really hard time recruiting and retaining. So we have to get new homes for sale on the market in that middle market and even upper end so that people can move through the housing spectrum. The other thing that I'm excited to see us do is really dial down into where we already have core economic sectors that we can explore secondary and tertiary business opportunities. Transportation, aviation, engineering, healthcare. This major investment by Essentia, the major investment by St. Luke's. Where are the opportunities to do product development and drug development? The opportunity to bring the medical school and the PharmD school, and what spin-off opportunities might there be to actually develop like a medical district within our community? We have a great, diverse, well-anchored economy. The opportunity, or the question is, where can we go next with that?
Thank you. Mayor Larson?
Thank you. I am a workforce development geek. This is the work I did prior to becoming mayor, and I am proud that the National League of Cities selected Duluth as one of 250 applicants to be one of 15 cities in the Good Jobs, Great Cities initiative. We have the leading workforce development director in the region, not just the state, in the region. Her name is Elena Fauché. She is leading this national model that is now investing in manufacturing, healthcare, and construction. We need to keep prioritizing and including workforce in everything we do. That is why, if you get a public subsidy from the City of Duluth, you will meet project labor agreements, you will meet community benefit job creation agreements. That's what we do. The expectation is we grow good jobs. The other things we can do are the important ancillary investments of childcare, of housing, and continuing to invest in creating a sense of space, a sense of place, a sense of community, where again, the question of what is a core city service has to be inclusive of those experiences that keep people grounded, that make them love Duluth. And when we're talking about whether or not we're going to adjust wages, as was suggested by my opponent, the follow-up question always has to be how? How will we pay for that?
We've got time for a 60-second rebuttal from both of you. And I'll just mention just concrete examples. We hear things, I look around the room, I see the school district, I see Apex, I see the 148th Fighter Wing, I see Cirrus. So these are concrete examples of businesses that we know could be expanding and are falling short of recruitment. What role could the city play in helping them meet those goals and needs? Roger?
Thanks, Daniel. And again, I'd just come back to the two things that, or at least one of the two things I had touched on, and that was that very real problem of housing in the middle of the market. Because we have such scarce inventory, what we see happening is those who can overbuy or over rent. And that continues to drive up the cost of housing within our community. It makes it hard to recruit, it makes it hard to retain, and honestly, it makes it hard for many Duluthians to afford to continue to live in our community. So we have to get more inventory on the market in the middle of the market. It's not the city's job to build houses, but it is our job to work on the infrastructure side of that. The streets, the utilities, the water, the sewer, the site prep, so that when a builder builds, what they're bringing to the market is the cost of building and not the cost of all of those other things that go with. And we should just touch on childcare. I've had the opportunity to do home visits. I've had the opportunity to visit with folks like Building Blocks and the Lakeside Early Learning Center, working with the state on the regulations around age group and per square footage, as well as capital investments, so that when they need to make investments in their operations, they can do that without having to take it out of their already really thin operating budget. Those are critical things that we can do in partnership.
And Mayor Larson, 60 seconds. Thank
Yes, thank you. So our workforce development system works very closely with the ABE program, with ISD 709, with community colleges. You as employers need us to understand that you need workers, and it is our job to make sure that every kid graduates from high school ready to work. It is our job to make sure that every kid has a safe place to sleep so that they can get going to school the next day. All of that is our shared responsibility. I am so pleased to hear housing be a priority for my opponent, who at the beginning of the campaign said that the city is not in the housing business. We absolutely are in the housing business, and we're also in the child care business. My child care task force, which I announced in my State of the City this spring, will be launching next month. I want to thank Elissa Hansen of Northspan Development and Tony of the Northland Foundation for co-chairing that task force. The last time they co-chaired a task force, it resulted in 1,700 new units of housing, a $16 million trust fund, and strategies that accelerated housing. I'm looking forward to helping families and workers and employers have reliable, safe childcare to help meet the stability that your business deserves.
you both.
Thanks. Mayor Larson, Roger Reinert, you're both longtime DFLers with impressive records of public service. What we want to ask is what you feel sets you apart from the other. What does the choice that voters have, and why should eligible Duluth voters this fall choose you in this election? Mayor Larson, we'll start with you.
Is this our closing statement?
No.
Okay. Thank you for the question. We're very different candidates. We get along well, we like each other, we know each other. We're very different. Here's how we're different. I am not here to air a campaign of grievances. I am here to help us find solutions to move forward. I am here with a track record and experience and relationships that people are on record with me as advancing. I am here to make progress happen and to ensure we are not going back. My work as a mayor has always been grounded in the hope and opportunity of this community. It has always been focused on long-term stability. You as a community are not hiring an interim mayor, and you are not hiring an adjunct mayor. You are hiring a long-term leader to be the CEO of your community. We have very different details, we have very different successes, and we have a very different leadership style. I do not lead from the front. It is we, not me, always, every day.
Thank you. Roger Reinert.
Thanks, Chuck. I struggle with this question because in 8 months of the campaign, we've only talked about our campaign. So I usually say, well, that's the work of the voter, to draw your own distinctions. I will say that how we campaign is reflective of how we serve. You've not seen me referencing Mayor Larson in what we talk about. I invite you to go look at all of our socials. I don't use the word opponent. I am also running. I don't find that to be helpful. It's divisive. It feels like confrontational. It is healthy for us to have meaningful choice. And we've not had that in 16 years in a mayor's race. We filled this room because we have two strong, viable candidates. And I think that is a good thing for our community. And so through the rest of this campaign, even as it gets more heated, it feels like it gets a little bit spicier, you can continue to see that from me and from our campaign. And I've met with you from one end of the community to the other. I've sat with you, I've listened, I've taken notes. Those 5 big issues have come from you. They're not a list of complaints. They're not something that I've made up. They're something that I'm giving voice to and reflecting. And we're seeing it reflected in the activities going on in our community right now.
Mayor Larson, a chance to respond?
Sure. I would say I think it's very clear that we are opposing each other. And clear is kind. It's okay to say that you have very different choices. If my opponent felt that he was aligned with my choices, he wouldn't be running. And that's okay. But I am not going to shy away from ensuring that you are seeing distinction and choice and difference of vision, of tenacity, of strength, of experience, of qualification to continue to move this community forward.
Thank you. Final word on the choice that the voters have this fall, Roger Reinert.
I'm just grateful that all of us have meaningful choice. Again, that was one of the big reasons that I decided to run.
Thank you.
We did it. That's 10 questions. We have time for closing comments, so we've got a minute and a half each for each candidate to provide closing comments. That's the end of our formal questions. Before we close, I just want to remind folks that, of course, Election Day is coming up on November 7th, and early voting begins September 22nd. I want to thank the DNT again and all of our team at the Chamber and all of you for being here. And so for our closing, if you could each provide a minute and a half to explain why you believe people should vote for you, and we will start with Roger Reinert.
Well, again, thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Chuck. Thank you for what looks like a couple hundred people that have taken their lunch hour to be with us today. Again, I'm running for mayor because, like many, I just think that it's time for something different. And like you, I'm concerned about the 5 big issues that you've shared with me. Housing across all income levels, growing our commercial tax base, streets, all caps, exclamation mark streets, downtown Duluth, and affordable property taxes. And like you, I think there are practical, tangible steps that we can take moving forward. I am grateful for the 63% vote that we got in the primary because it told me we're on the right track, that these aren't just issues I made up, that they're your issues as well. Duluth right now, we're sort of good, and we should be exceptional. Our unique neighborhoods, abundant outdoor spaces, the big lake, and of course our people. But in the last census, we grew by 400 people, 0.01%. While all other regional centers in Minnesota grew by an average of 10%. That's not growth, it's stagnation. We have to challenge ourselves to do better. City government can't do everything, nor should it. But what we should do is the basics and do them really well. Effective, efficient, and at a tax rate we can both afford and sustain. When done well, it doesn't even make the news. It just happens. It happens so that our residents can succeed, our businesses can grow, and our neighborhoods can thrive. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Larson.
Thank you so much to the Chamber. Thank you to the DNT. Thank you, Roger. Thank you to all of you for being here. The fundamental question that you get to answer for yourself is, generally speaking, are we moving in the right direction? Not the perfect direction, not the always going to deliver everything to everybody all the time direction, but generally the right direction. I believe we are. And I think you do too. My opponent has stated many times that there are tangible and specific steps, but I did not hear any today. What I have shared with you is our collective track record of investment and success. 850% increase in streets, 22% decrease in crime, 32% decrease in greenhouse gases, 1,700 new units of housing, 4th straight record year of private investment. These are our successes. I am proud to be your mayor. It is with humility and passion and commitment and tenacity that I have the support of many people in this room and many people outside of it. At the end of the day, the choice is yours. We will honor it because that's what we do. But the fundamental question you get to ask, is this the right direction for our community? My answer is yes. My answer is your neighborhood gets to be one of choice and opportunity and prosperity, and so does every other neighborhood. My answer is that your business matters, and so do your workers. And my answer is that our collective future is worth fighting for. Thank you.
Thank you both. We are ending right on time, so thank you all for keeping your answers on time, and thank you for our timekeeper. Thank you again to the DNT. Just a reminder, we will be back here tomorrow. You're all welcome to come back. We've got 3 forums tomorrow for the city council races. But again, on behalf of the DNT, on behalf of the Duluth Area Chamber, thank you all for being here. Please join me in giving a round of applause for both these candidates. Thanks for being here.